everybody to Empower People's course. We're going to be talking about business continuity planning. I know, it's
Yay!
like the most exciting topic ever. And you'd be like, it is. You know why? Because we all got to continue. We got to keep the show on the road, right? So let our instructor today is Millie Corsoro, and she's with Client First, and she's is our resident expert on business continuity planning. And Millie, if you wouldn't mind taking us over to the next slide so we can say our Empower People oath, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Where we go? Oh, there we go.
There we go. So if everyone could repeat after me, and yes, those who will be watching this later and those who are watching on Facebook Live. Let's not make it awkward. Let's just do it. I, Tiffany Joy,
I, Millie Corsoro,
do
do
solemnly
solemnly
swear to
swear
accept
to
a
accept a
lifelong
lifelong
obligation
obligation
to
to
hone my
hone my
superhero
superpower
powers and apply those
powers and apply
superhero
those
powers to
superhero
the good of
powers
the
to the good
people
of the
I
people I
serve.
serve.
I will
I will
promote and
promote and
add to the
add to the
ongoing
ongoing
success of
success of
Empower
Empower
People, its
People, its
members, and the
members, and the
people,
people,
organizations, and
organizations, and
communities
communities
it
it
serves.
serves.
I will help
I
prepare
will help
the next
prepare the next
generation of
generation of
superheroes.
superheroes.
I am
I am
driven to be a
driven to be a
positive change
positive
agent
change
for
agent
those
for
I
those I
serve
serve
and
and
interact with. And now we'll take a moment. Millie, I don't know if you remember, but we put our hands on our hips and we look up into the sky. This is called superhero pose, and we will feel empowered at least for the rest of the day. And if you feel like you're losing that sense of empowerment, feel free to partake in that at any given time. And now, without further ado, I pass the baton to Millie.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us here this lovely Thursday afternoon. Today, as Tiffany had mentioned, we're going to talk about it's very exciting, the exciting topic of business continuity planning 101 for small businesses. Um, some of the learning outcomes that you will be able to walk away with, at least for precursory knowledge, is to identify those operations that are critical to your business, conduct a risk assessment to determine what kind of um, impacts you may face if a certain uncontrollable event were to happen to your business, and develop a response to address every concern that may arise, whether that be financial data or finding another location to operate during those times that you are not in operations. So with that being said, let's move on to who am I. My name is Millie Corsoro. I'm an independent agent and inside sales agent with Client First Insurance Group. I have been here since October, but I do have about 3 years of experience in the auto, home, and commercial insurance market, but with also over a decade of experience working with other business owners and commercial clients. So I understand that sometimes the need can be pretty big for these kinds of consumers, and I really pride myself on being able to service their needs in every way that I can. With that being said, I'm also a proud Girl Scout troop leader and volunteer. My daughter is on her 6th year of a Girl Scout troop. And I have to do a little humble bragging here. She just met her goal of selling 750 Girl Scout cookie boxes. So yay for Brooklyn. So that this was a slide that I had shared in my previous course when we were talking about what kind of risks of business face. I thought it was a really important fact that I wanted to share again. And that fact is that 70% of all small businesses will face some type of a crisis in their first 10 years. And what the purpose of identifying your risks and creating a continuity plan does for your business, it does help foster leadership within your organization. You can identify those people that are going to be proactive and put them in positions that will help your business grow. It also kind of related to that, there's an accountability there and a certain trust that's built, not just within your organization, but also within the community that you're serving. And your employees knowing that you're being mindful and proactive about creating a resilient organization, it's going to boost that morale. Those are going to be employees that know that they have a job that's going to take care of them and their families, regardless of what may happen to that business. So it's something that is easily overlooked with everything that business owners have to face, but it is a very important aspect of managing your business. So let's move on to the first slide. And the first thing I wanted to mention too, um, uh, continuity planning can look different for every business. It's something that is really dependent on the size of your organization, the number of employees you have, what kind of operations you're in. Um, with that being said, sometimes it is a process that when you have your board of directors, personal board directors, or an actual board of directors, it's something that can take a few hours, a few days, a few months, and even in some cases, a few years. Um, so it's really important that we take the time to really identify not just those key operations, but the key people that are integral to our business. Um, so, what are those operations? Are you a business that relies on foot traffic to come in? Are you a restaurant, for example? Um, do you have to have people coming in to your business to generate your revenue? And if you don't have that, like the best example I have that we just recently faced here was in the city of Richmond when they had no water. There were a lot of businesses that were affected by that, some differently than others. If you were a restaurant and you rely on that foot traffic to come in, you're looking at a shortfall in your income because of there not being water. But if you're working in an office, it's as simple as saying, okay, well, let's pack our employees and have them work. That is something that obviously is much more easier to do now that we've gotten accustomed to life after the pandemic, but it wasn't always as simple as, hey, let's just have everybody work from home. So the first critical step is identifying those operations that are critical to your business and what are you going to do if any of those functions are disrupted. And that can be that's probably a fairly easy task to do for most businesses. We know where we're getting our revenue. We know where we're getting our business leads from. So uh, let's just keep that in mind. That's step number one. So then once you have identified those critical functions, the next step is going to be conducting an assessment, and then you're going to develop your response plan. Um, what does that look like? Well, you're going to want to identify potential risks, anything like natural disasters, cyber threats, or supply chain disruptions. Like I said before, are going to affect different businesses differently. Are you in an area, for example, that is prone to a lot of flooding? If you are, what are your chances of actually experiencing it? And what kind of steps should you take, whether it's concerning the structure of the building and the equipment within the building? Are there some items that would be better off stored a little higher? Or are there some items that can be put in storage off site where it doesn't get damaged? Those are all considerations that we need to take depending on the operation of your business. Another big one that is increasingly debilitating for any size business are those cyber threats. Increasingly, it is happening to the smaller businesses because there is more opportunity for those criminals to damage these businesses because they're smaller and they're not always prepared for such a threat. So, walking away from this, my biggest warning to everyone that's in the business sector is: are you prepared for a cyber threat? And that looks a lot of different ways nowadays. We have a lot of ways to digitally communicate. That could be a text message, that could be an email, that could be somebody hacking your website. And so we really have to make sure that we're not just identifying the cyber threat itself, but we're also looking at all avenues that that cyber threat can come and damage our reputation, our income, or just general reputation as well. Um, Supply chain disruptions, those are a lot harder to control because, well, a lot of these things are a lot harder to control. But if your delivery company is not in, or if there's an integral resource that you have to get from another business that you work with to make a part, if you're in manufacturing, do you have backups? Do you have redundancy built within those supply chains to make sure that if something were to happen to your primary supplier, you at least have a backup supplier to make sure that those items that you need to produce the product that your business produces can continue to produce? Because without that part, without that resource, you're not going to be able to make it and you're not going to be able to generate your revenue. So, with that being said, that brings us into the next step, which is developing a response plan. And again, this kind of ties into my first slide where it's an opportunity to identify those key people in your business that are accountable and trustworthy and that are going to make sure that they're directing everyone where they need to be, when they need to be, and that they're communicating in a way that is clear for everyone to understand. And again, I had mentioned making sure that you're planning redundancy backups, not just in those supply chains, but also you might, if you're a business like us in the insurance world, we rely a lot on our phones and our internet. If you're without power, what kind of redundancies do you need to have built in? In our case, in the insurance world, it's a matter of simply just, I don't have power at the office, I could pack up my stuff and go home and work from home. But if you're like a lot of medical labs, they send a lot of stuff on the internet too. If they don't have internet, they're not able to send labs or get labs or fill prescriptions or anything. So they are certainly an example of a business that would, if their primary carrier for their internet service were to go down, they'd have to have a backup. So those are all little ways that you really need to kind of dive into the risks that your business uniquely possesses and what unique response plan you have to develop from that. So this kind of brings us back to the side. We're going to go back and touch on the cyber threat a little bit. So one of the things that you will do that a lot of businesses do is that you're going to maintain backups of your data and your information. You also want to make sure that you're testing that, making sure that you're able to not just save it, but also access it when you need it. You're also, like I had mentioned before, you're going to want to secure your physical assets to make sure that if they are in danger of potentially being damaged in any kind of a risk that might happen to your business, that you can either have them somewhere where they're safe or you have a backup in case something were to happen to that critical piece of equipment. The other thing is like if you are a business that also has generators, backup generators, there's a lot of businesses that operate on backup generators when the power goes down. You got to make sure you're testing those weekly, sometimes weekly. Most businesses, like in the hospitals, they're going to test that weekly. And you don't want to find out at a critical moment that these things don't work. So it's really important that you're not just ensuring that that backup is there, but you're also going to want to test it to make sure that it's there when you need it too. The next step is establishing communication protocols. this is really important. You can't have a lot of questions when everybody's kind of running around trying to kind of put in stopgap measures to prevent the worst from happening. There's a lot of miscommunication, and that can delay a lot of things for your business to get back up and running the way that it should be. So to ensure that that doesn't happen, the recommendation I would suggest is making sure that those protocols are in place before anything happens. So that way, you know, any of those key people that should be contacted are being contacted and the proper information is being communicated to them. And you're also going to want to make sure that everybody knows how to use those communication methods, whether it's email, messaging apps, or internal equipment like walkie-talkies, or radios. So testing, testing, testing. You got to make sure you test. Another one that people don't think about a lot, but it's always on the front mind of anyone that owns a business, and that's going to be your financial contingency plans. And in that case, it can vary. It can be a little bit of this, a little bit of that, or it could be just all of this, or it could be, but you're going to want to maintain a cash access to emergency funds, or access to credit. So that way you have that ability within your business financials to go beyond what you need to cover those additional expenses. There's a lot of things that we don't think about when we are in business and we have to plan for something like an unexpected event, like the rent that we're going to have to pay on an additional location, the cost you might have to incur from having to hire additional employees to fix up any other messes that might happen. So you certainly want to make sure that you have access to some kind of cash, whether that's your own access or credit, to back that up. And every year, every couple of years, it's always good to review your insurance. The example that I had used with the Richmond water, there were some businesses that did have business income interruption. So if you were a restaurant and you had that coverage, that means that when you couldn't open your restaurant for operations to make money, you were able to file a claim with your insurance company, and that would have likely been covered. And then, of course, there's always ways to plan for alternative revenue streams. We saw a lot of that creativity come about during COVID and has really stuck with us. A lot of, like the restaurant, going back to that example, a lot of the restaurants were doing pickup orders, drive up orders, curbside delivery. Um, the remote work aspect has really been something that we've kind of leaned on in our 21st century work environment. It's kind of built in. It's kind of given us a backup for those, you know, and it's even as simple as like a snow day. People can't drive to work. Okay, you can work from home. So that's really a nice aspect that we get to have now, that we've kind of gotten used to, but it's still a good idea to talk about it and put it out there for your employees to understand what the expectation is, if something were to happen to the office itself and they couldn't come in. So, and then, like I said before, it's really important that you make sure that you're testing your your plan regularly, and that's not just your equipment. It's the communication protocols. You're going to want to check that. Some employees come and go. You might have to replace an employee that left with one that is coming in, and then you have to test it. Is this person someone that's going to be reliable enough to that we can count on in these moments that we need someone to step up and not just make sure that they're communicating, but go above and beyond in these moments that we didn't really plan for. So, and then you're going to want to make sure that you're getting feedback from everybody. You're going to want to make sure that the people that are involved, that are directly dealing with the risk, that you're getting their feedback and understanding what went wrong, what went good. And you're also going to want to talk to your employees to make sure that they understand that their feedback is important and that it gives you an idea of, okay, this happened, but everybody else was still okay. We were operating, we were communicating, or we weren't communicating. Nobody had any idea what was going on. You know what I mean? So I think it's important that um, we really emphasize, like I had mentioned in my very first slide, that this speaks to the resiliency of an organization. And really, I think that is not something that we spend enough time talking on an individual level and both on a organizational level. The resiliency. We can really bounce back from anything as long as we have the right procedures and people in place to make sure that we're implementing what we need to implement when we need to implement for our future success. So with that, I had mentioned that the resiliency part, and that's part of being a well prepared business. With that response time diminished, it gives you an opportunity to really focus on those items that are going to make a bigger impact on your bounce back from any adverse thing that may happen to a business. And it could be anything from, you know, flooding, it could be, the water thing in Richmond, it could be you lost your building in a fire, some critical supply chains were broken and now you have to find another way. Like these are all things that if anything like that were to happen in your business, you're really going to be able to see it during that time of stress. So a little pre-planning always helps, like anything else in life, right? So, and with that, I want to know, does anyone have any questions, any clarifications I can make or
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, Millie. I'm sure there's going to be questions, but I want to or actually say goodbye to those in Facebook land. If you're not an Empower People member, shame on you. Just kidding. You can join for free at empowerpeople.org/join, which is in the comments section. It's free. And then you too can take part in the Q&A section. So until then, we'll see you on the flip side of bringing that oldie but goodie back. So I'll check you later and we'll start with the Q&A.